We have already covered on this podcast how we are all unique individuals that are defined by different things like our genes, our brain wiring, and the different circumstances that we had as we grow up. And all of these different things that are structured in our brain go back to a single idea, that is our perception of reality. In this episode, we thought we would go more in details about how our perception of reality is formed and why we all have our subjective way of seeing and observing the world around us that shapes our opinions and ideas and how we perceive everything, including other people. We're also going to try to answer the question, can we change our perception of reality? Can we change who we are as people and perceive things in a different way? Is that even possible? This is a really important episode for us, and it is something that we keep pondering about. So we really hope that you enjoyed this one, and let's get right into it.
We've talked about this in previous episodes, how we've talked about circumstances, we've talked about kind of how we perceive reality, we've talked about past experience, and we've talked about ego and identity that we make for ourselves. So we kind of already covered this topic. But I kind of wanted to take a little bit more detailed and a different angle into explaining or maybe trying to understand and give a little bit of explanation of how it works exactly. Because at least for me, that's something that I'm working on right now, and I'm trying to kind of have a bit of a deeper understanding for how it works, so I can take it to a step higher for myself as well. So I guess it's good to also talk about it in this podcast. The topic is, I guess at this point, kind of semi-clear. We're talking about perception of reality. Before we start getting into the small details, I want to start with asking the question of how does our perception of reality and why does our perception of reality get built in the first place, or how does it form itself into the way that we perceive the world the way we do?
Well, it is the same way that you said. We've talked about this before. We have mentioned our circumstances and luck. We have mentioned our brain wiring and our childhood, all the things that we get influenced by. All of these together formulate this way that we see the world. We have a certain personality that we are born with, and then there are the things that our parents tell us and the things we learn at school. How often did I say the same sentences in so many episodes? And all of these things gives us this unique way of viewing the things around us and the external world and even our internal world. Some people are more some people are closer to their emotions, some people are more logical, and just based on these two things, one would view the world in a completely different way. And I would say that every single individual has has a unique perception of reality that is different than another person. It could be subtle differences, it could be big differences, and even if you look at animals, it works in the same way. They have their unique structures and their unique perception on things. So I guess that answered the question how our perception of reality formulates. Maybe I mix stuff up.
No, it kind of does. I want to try to focus a little bit more on the relation between the way we perceive things and our childhood and our past experiences. So I'm gonna try to get back to you again with asking why does our perception kind of builds the way that it does? Like what makes you think that our perception, because we know how it forms.
Yeah.
And we know that past experiences and childhood are related to the way how it forms. But why does it form in that way?
I think that's where
Like I'm trying to get a little bit into the brain mechanism.
I think that is where it's tied to your brain wiring and brain structure. Like these are things that are outside of your control, your genes as well. Like we've mentioned before that if two people face the same trauma, face the same thing, they would perceive it in a different way. Why so? I think that is related to your brain structure. It's it's a mechanism that is outside of your control, that is unique to the way your brain is structured, that is different than another person. How does it happen exactly? I don't think we can answer that. Maybe there is some scientific research related to that topic, but I don't think it's an easy question to tackle, I guess. But I'm pretty sure it is related to your biology in a sense. Why you perceive it differently than another person?
It's also okay. So I'm gonna jump here as well, and it's also related to, so looking at it from a different perspective. We all know that the brain works as sort of a storage unit, if you want to call it
Memory,
like this.
like memory.
Exactly, memory. The brain. Okay, so before I get into the details, this is mostly taken. Like my understanding of this is taken from Joe Dispenza's books, as you know, that I've been getting into them a little bit more lately, and I'm listening to more of his podcasts or maybe his shows, and I'm trying to focus a bit more on the science behind why things work the way they do and how you can alter them, which is how I came up with the idea of this episode. According to him, and according to actually many other scientists as well, when you experience something new in your life, or when you experience something in life, there's a new networks of neurons that build up in your brain that formulate kind of or summarize the experience that you're going through.
It's related to neuroplasticity.
Exactly. Exactly. Andrew Huberman talked about this as well. And so the more experiences that you have, the more networks of these neurons that you've got in your brain. And look at it from the past experience, or how the past is related to this. In the past, you've always been having experiences, because the longer you go back, the more you notice that you don't have much networks because your brain didn't have any experiences. So the more stuff that you experience, the more networks that you build.
So basically, the older you get, the less new experiences that you face as well.
That's one of the things. But at the same time, the neurons, the networks of neurons that you've built in the past, determine your perception of reality. Determines the way you function, the way you do things, the way you understand things. So when you look at it like this, in the sense of like, okay, so if our past build up these networks of neurons in our brains, and these neurons of our brains, or these networks of neurons in our brains, help us determine perceiving reality. In what way we're going to perceive reality. Thus, by this equation, we are just reliving our past.
In a way.
In a way.
In a way.
And then if you want to take it...
Don't forget that we're a prediction machines. And how do we formulate this type of prediction? Based from our past experience.
Exactly. And we also look for confirmation biases to confirm the things that we know, or the things that we want to know, or the things that we would like to believe. So based on that, when I started getting a little bit deeper into this kind of things, I started realizing that we're technically almost always reliving the things that we've lived so far, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. Like, I'm gonna take the simplest examples of this, which is how you wake up and what you do after waking up. Take it even how you eat your food, how you brush your teeth, how you do your hair. It's all stuff that are gonna be a repetition of how you've done it so far. And then when you add to it, okay, what if I decide I have a different hairstyle every now and then? The fact that you have a different hairstyle every now and then is related to your past experience, because you like to have things different every now and then.
Sure.
So it's technically a repetition of the past. It's a pattern that you can see in yourself. And then to that, Dispenza goes on and explains how neurons that fire together kind of gets connected together and work together, which means if you've had a past experience, and in the past you've reacted in a specific way, and you've had specific emotions, you had specific physical reaction, exactly, and then you've repeated that over time, multiple times, then what happens is that the network of these neurons that have been firing together every time a similar experience happened in the external world, that kind of becomes the hardware. That kind of becomes like hardly instilled into you.
Your program.
Exactly. And then it becomes harder to get rid of it, because neurons that fire together work together. And you've repeated this hundreds, thousands, I don't know how many times. So that becomes really hard to get rid of, which is why people say that it's harder to change as you grow older. Yeah. Because the neurons have been firing.
There is some truth to that.
Exactly. Like, definitely. Okay, so I don't want to go on in a long monologue here. I've explained what I wanted to do. But now, how do we that forms sort of consequences of our actions, right? Because the more that you believe yourself, the more that you repeat the same actions,
The more that you think that your perception of the world is the true perception.
exactly. So the consequence of that would be,
Yeah, pretty big. I would say the consequences are what caused the world to be the way it is. I guess.
if you want to track it back 100 years, then that hundreds,
not even
thousands of
100 years,
years.
like just start of humanity. You know,
Exactly.
I think it's also something that is getting better, but also more extreme. Better because we are becoming more open-minded and we're understanding these kind of things, like the thing that we're talking about right now. But more extreme because of social media and the internet, where you are more susceptible to confirmation bias and finding people who believe in the same shit that you do. I know, yeah, this is the truth. And then when someone contradict that, this doesn't exist. This is not real. That's when you're like canceling.
We tend to do that a lot. Like, even Alan Watts talked about how he talked about the midway, and he talked about both extremes, and you've got the midway, and he took it as an example, as if you've got like a clock that's swinging both ways,
like the basic foundation of Taoism.
Taoism, exactly. And he talks about how, as human beings, we always tend to force the thing in one direction, and then by the laws of the nature, it has to go back.
Like the black and white.
Exactly, it has to go back, and then when it goes back, it kind of has some momentum from there, so that drives into the other direction, which is physics at this point. And then it keeps going from one extreme to another extreme, and in between, it stops a little bit in the middle. But then after it stops for a little bit, we also have the tendencies to move it in one direction again, and that creates these extreme scenarios, or maybe extremist people that tend to, take things to the extreme. And
that's why we get really stuck with our own opinions, thoughts, and the way we do things. And when somebody shows us, or we hear somewhere that a different way could be better, could help us, could improve us, we don't believe that. We don't want to.
It doesn't confirm the way that we've been living so far.
Exactly.
It denies everything that we've done so far.
So we find certain things that confirm the things that we believe in, and this makes us believe even more strongly that our perception of reality is the real one.
I'll take another simple example of this, which I'm sure you're gonna relate to as well. It's like when you had a bad night's sleep. You woke up exactly. My worst nightmare. You woke up, you're feeling tired, you're feeling low. We tend to look for the confirmation bias that something has happened in the last or in the previous few days, which led us to being tired today and exhausted and feeling like shit. Because we want to confirm that we're feeling that way. Sure. Instead of being like, you know what?
Confirmation bias.
Exactly. Works, instead of being like, you know what? It doesn't matter. And you just try to go on with your day. No, we cling to confirm the way that we feel.
This also could be because it is the way you've always done it when you're sleep deprived. So for me, this is how I tend to behave when I'm sleep deprived, trying to find reasons, and I get stuck in this. I'm sleep deprived, so I have to be in a bad mood, so I have to be angry. Exactly. It's because I have always behaved in this way when I am sleep deprived.
Exactly. And this is hardly instilled into you.
Exactly.
And then we try, because it's hardly instilled into us, it's hard to also try to look for something new. So we always try to find things that would confirm this state that we're in, instead of trying to be like, you know what? I'm sleep deprived today for the first time. I'm going to be like, fuck it. Yeah. And I'm just going to try to let go of the way that I'm trying to confirm it for myself every time.
And I know that is true, and I know it is evidential because I see other people when they are sleep deprived with even less sleep and they are still home. They are still normal. So why is it me that I have to be in this way when I am sleep deprived?
Because you're looking for the confirmation bias. But so these are the consequences, technically, of the way that our perception is formed and the way that our perception repeats itself. If we're going to take it a step further, so based on the consequences that we've talked about, perception matters a lot for growth. If you want to progress in life, and if you want to, I'm starting to cringe out when I say these words, but it doesn't matter. If you want to grow in life and you want to progress and you want to get to where you want to get to, your perception is going to play a huge role. And your perception, again, is made up of all the things that we've talked about. The relation between the perception and this, I feel like it's still today really underestimated or undermined. Since our perception is based on our past, based on our childhood, based on our experiences, based on our emotion states, based on our brain wiring, genes, all of this stuff. Exactly. it determines the way that we perceive reality and the way that we behave and function in certain scenarios.
And that leads to us believing that this is
Then you
how
get
it should
stuck
be.
in this vicious cycle of, repeating, confirming, repeating,
And that
confirming,
is
and then you
basically
can't get out of it.
that basically prevents you from
Even
finding
if you
change.
always try to break the cycle, that also becomes a cycle itself.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
without getting into too many cycles here, how do you think is the best way to go about it to change our perception? Or let's reformulate the question. What's the best way to take advantage of the fact that our perception can influence our progress and growth in reality so much? What is the best way that you can, just take advantage of that fact and then alternate it in a way that would benefit you the most?
I think to be able to alternate it, we have to go back to the first step, which is the first step to so many things related to change, which is self-awareness. If you don't understand that your perception of reality is flawed, it's not reality, then it's not going to be possible to adapt changes in your life, because everything that other people are saying, everything that you read in books, everything that you see are not going to inspire you, because it is not the way that you see things. It's a different way, so it can't be true. So first comes the self-awareness, and then the understanding that there is some truth to what other people say, and that ultimately all the different perceptions that we have are not the true reality, that there is still a reality somewhere that none of us are even able to observe. So who are we to know everything about the world? We have some truth, other people have some truth. That's how we start to collect all of these different information that help us improve. So I think it's really important to understand why our perception of reality is unique and different, and you need to become more open-minded and more understanding that other people could hold things, could say things that might work on your favor. So I think it's just different steps that you have to go through, and it has to start with self-awareness and understanding. If these things don't exist, then you can take advantage of that. You can take advantage of this unique perception of reality that we have, and working on alternating it, or at least working on what you can alternate in it, because I'm sure that there's a lot of things that you can't really change when it comes to your perception of reality. There are things I don't think that you are able.
I think that's where we differ. I'm becoming more and more of a firm believer that you're able to change your whole perception of reality.
I tend to differ here, because let's take an example of our perception of colors. Like we all know, like we know now that women perceive more different hues of colors than men do, and even between men, we perceive a certain color subtly a little bit different. And I don't think that is something that you can change. And
I'm pretty sure you can, because look at it like so. If you're gonna go based on the studies, the more networks that you build, the more you'll be able to perceive it better. I'm pretty sure that the difference why women can perceive it better than men, or sorry, not better, but can perceive different hues than men, is because women are more. They tend to experience more things with colors. So when they go shopping, like I'm just gonna take the basic example. When they go shopping, you've got almost every color possible in the world in their clothes that they can decide between which one goes with which one.
That makes sense.
When we do that, when we go shopping as men, and you look at men's clothing, I would say about 50% of the clothes that are there are darker colors, and then the other 50% is a mix between lighter colors and different kind of shades.
How most men
Exactly. So that kind of tends to us having less networks of neurons in our brain that tend to change our perception of color, or our perception of the differences in hues colors to a different degree than women. Which is why you have men that can perceive color way differently than other men, because they've been exposed to way more colors.
Exposure,
Yeah, they've been exposed to more colors than the average
now
man.
you remind me of like when one takes psychedelics like LSD or mushrooms or MDMA.
After that,
you see a lot of different hues and colors. Some of them stay with you afterwards.
Exactly.
So now I'm starting to change.
So you can kind of change your perception, but in order, okay, this is so in very simple words. What I've come to realize is that everyone is going to talk about it in a different way. Okay, everyone's going to be like, in order to change your perception or in order to grow, you have to do this and this. And then you've got the scientific way, you've got the philosophical way, and then you've got psychological way. You've got
There's a
the
lot of different
self-improvement,
things. Sure.
but it's all the same. I have read. I don't want to overestimate myself.
It's
either.
just the same shit.
And I don't want to
presented-
say
Just the
exactly
same shit presented differently.
in different way. I like that, which is why I'm saying I don't want to sound arrogant. I don't want to say that I've read everything there is to read or I've done everything there is to do. But I've read different types or different advices from different religions, if you're going to call them religions. And I've come to realize that they all lead to the same thing. They all start by self-awareness, realizing that things the way they are, and then they lead to one practice or another that would lead to more networks of neurons that are getting built in your brain, and then actually, like Chris Williamson says it in the most simple way, just do the fucking thing.
Yeah.
So when you start doing the thing and you start changing the way you react, the way you behave, you start building more networks of neurons in your brain, and then that leads to different perception of reality. And then, like I said, okay, so there's maybe some things that you can't change. Say you've managed to expose yourself to all different colors in the world, and your perception of colors have changed.
There is still a ceiling somewhere.
Like exactly. There's still a ceiling which is going to be related to your maybe genetics, maybe the human brain.
Not only that, we can just compare our perception with animals, because
exactly,
if they have a different structure, they're going to see things that we're never going to be able
exactly,
to do.
Definitely. Like I'm not denying that part, but I'm still a firm believer that you can alter your perception to a huge degree. Because I look at myself, how I used to perceive things in the past and how I perceive things nowadays.
Same here.
And the difference between them is literally like kind of day and night.
Yeah, it's like a different person.
Exactly. So like when you look at it, like, okay, even the smallest things used to annoy me so much. Nowadays, when something small happens, I'm just like,
you can take it the other way, that there used to be things that didn't annoy me, and now they annoy me more than before.
Exactly.
It works both ways, actually.
Exactly. So to sum it up, our perception matters a lot. It has to do a lot with our past. It has to do a lot with our experience. And I'm becoming somewhat of a firm believer that in order to change, in order to go where you want to go, in order to build the things that you want to build for yourself, the first thing that you have to change, or the most important thing that you have to work on, is your perception. And then in what way or in which direction, that's completely different. Because for some people, it's about letting go of the things that they always cling on to and holding to. For some people, it's not letting go, it's just having a different kind of mindset or maybe a different kind of understanding to how things work. But this is all related to our perception at the end of the day. So your perception, like I said, this is what I'm coming to believe nowadays, that your perception matters hugely. And
I would say
in order to change it, you have to get new experiences. You have to have better understanding and more knowledge of things.
Yeah. And in order to do that, you need to be self-aware, which I think is tied to your perception of reality.
Exactly.
Like when you're more self-aware, that's you understand that I'm perceiving things in this certain way, and this other individual is not necessarily doing that. That's where self-awareness starts, that you're this unique individual who is having these different experiences, and you're analyzing all of these things. So I would say they're really tied together in a way.
It's like fake it till you make it. Faking it till I used to hate that sentence. Fake it till you make it. But nowadays I'm realizing that actually that works, because it changes the way you perceive things.
Just think about
it. Forces you to look at things in a different way, and kind of with time that's going to change the way you perceive things.
Just think about confidence. Like when you see a confident person, how do you know if he's faking it or if he's actually confident? You can't know that.
You just don't.
But maybe someone started this way, he's just faking it. Okay, I'm confident, then
but someday it's just
confidence. It's just happening.
It became his default mode.
Yeah.
His autopilot.
It became part of his perception of his world, and himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got nothing left to say, to be honest. I don't know. What about you? Do you have anything else to say?
Not really. I think we covered what we wanted to talk about here. So if you have reached the end, thank you for watching, and drop a comment if you have anything to say, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.
In the next one.